Good afternoon, Griffins and Griffin families. Mr. Screwcock here, and I just want to briefly talk about what we'll be exploring in our topic and Wide Horizon subjects throughout Summer 1. So our topic for this term is Hola Mexico, exploring all about the history and culture of Mexico. And we're going to be doing this mainly through a focus of geography and history. So from the historical sides of things, we'll be exploring and investigating the Maya civilization. But from a geography standpoint, we're going to be exploring the physical features of not just Mexico, but the whole of the Northern American continent. We're also going to be using maps and atlases to locate Mexico, so we can really identify it on a world map. And we'll be exploring and locating the Chihuahuan Desert as well. Now, linking in with our history, we're going to be locating ancient Mayan cities. So at home, it would be absolutely brilliant if you could do some extra research into the Mayan civilization and to tell us all about it. Maybe you could look up the famous Mayan calendar that even told us the world was going to end 10 years ago. Now, aside from this, we're also going to be doing some science this term with a focus on space. Looking through this, we're going to be describing the movement of the Earth and other planets in relative to the Sun in the solar system, describing the movement of the Moon relative to the Earth, describing the Sun, the Earth and the Moon as approximately spherical beings, and to use the idea of the Earth's rotation to explain the day and night cycle and to the apparent movement of the Sun across the sky. This will all be focused upon in Summer 1. Bye for now.
Hello, it's Mrs. Quick here, and I'm here to talk to you about our English for this half term. At the moment, we're looking at Macbeth, which of course is a very famous Shakespearean tragedy, and we're doing lots of writing. A lot of it includes figurative language, which is similes, metaphors. We're using lots of description, but we're also looking at some of the language. We're looking at making inferences about what we're reading. We're also making predictions about what's going to happen in the story. That's going to then move on to writing a letter using persuasive devices. We're going to persuade someone to do something through a letter. Moving on then, we're going to be moving on to our topic and focusing some of our English around our topic, which is Hola Mexico, which is obviously all about Mexico. And we're going to be writing a newspaper report all about the Day of the Dead, which is a very famous festival in Mexico. To write a newspaper report, I put an example on here. It would be really useful if the children could either access online or if you've actually got a newspaper that they can look at, for them to look at how a newspaper report is set out. Things like headlines, who wrote it, the columns that they're written in, the tense it's written in. We're going to be looking at passive voice, which is something we've touched on before in Year 5, and also an informational shift. Moving from a formal piece of writing, there are instances where we move to informal writing. So if the children could have a look at that, that would be wonderful. And also, it would be really useful if they could actually research what is the Day of the Dead, if they can find out some information about it before we start. That is what we're going to be focusing on this half term, and we're also going to be looking at a lot of editing and up-levelling work. The children are getting to the stage now where they can actually look at their own work and they can actually edit it to make it better. We'll be focusing on that as well. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon, Griffins and Griffin families. Mr. Screwcock here, and I just want to briefly touch upon what our Year 5 children are going to be exploring in maths throughout this half term. So the main focus is going to be on geometry, and this is split into a few certain sections. So firstly, we're going to be looking at angles and how we measure them in degrees. We will touch upon this a little bit more in a moment. But we're also going to be looking about not just how to measure angles in degrees, but also how to draw certain angles through the use of a protractor. And through that, we're going to be able to identify angles at a point and through a whole turn, and angles at a point on a straight line and a half turn. So when we have an angle through a whole turn, it's 360 degrees. Some children may have remembered, if they've used VR headsets, that it's 360 degree vision. Now, through that, we're going to be using properties of rectangles to deduce related facts and find missing lengths and angles. And we're going to be able to distinguish the difference between regular and irregular polygons based on reasoning about equal sides and angles. Now, leading on through our work on angles through the lens of polygons and irregular polygons, we're going to be exploring shape. So the children will be able to identify 3D shapes, including cubes and other cuboids, and from 2D representations. So for example, seeing a square and knowing that the 3D representation of that would be a cube. And finally, the children will be able to identify, describe and represent the position of a shape following a reflection or a translation, using the appropriate language to know that a shape has not changed. Now, before I go, I just wanted to briefly show you the 4 types of angles that we will be using and exploring in Year 5. So the first one is a right angle. A right angle is also a quarter of a turn and is represented by 90 degrees. This is a 90-degree angle. Then we have an acute angle. An acute angle is defined as an angle that is smaller than 90 degrees, anywhere from 1 to 89 degrees. We have got our acute angles. Then we have an obtuse angle, which is greater than 90 degrees, so it's bigger than a right angle, but it is not on a straight line. When an angle is on a straight line, it is a half turn, which is 180 degrees. So an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees, but less than 180. Finally, we have a reflex angle. A reflex angle is greater than 180 degrees. So it's more than that half turn all the way up before we come to a circle of a whole turn. We'll be going into more detail with this across this summer 1 term. Bye for now.